Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So welcome to this week's virtual Sunday here at ISKCON Chicago. Just a quick announcement. So a big thanks, first of all, to everyone who organized and participated in today's Rath Yatra celebrations. So thank you very much also to everyone who organized that. It was a fantastic and very successful event. You know, I guess a very apt way of making the best use of a bad bargain, to put in a plug for tonight's topic by Her Grace Danakeli Mataji. So many of us are familiar with tonight's speaker, Danakeli Mataji. She and her husband, Pratushrava Prabhu, have been fixtures at ISKCON Chicago. Since they left the more permanent Chicago congregation to go traveling across the country, distributing books, now they're located in New Talavan, serving the deities and the devotees there with full enthusiasm. So Danakeli Mataji was kind enough to join us to give tonight's Sunday Feast class as a continuation of the Brilliant as the Sun series. So she's going to be continuing that with her talk on making the best use of a bad bargain. So on that note, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much once again.
Okay, well, it's nice to be with you, although I can't see you or hear you, most of the audience. We're going to start with Jai Radha Madhava, and because I will not be able to hear any response, I will do each line twice and just do quick short kirtan, and then we'll start with our discussion. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Gopi Chanda Vallabha Girivardhari, Jai Gopi Chanda Vallabha Girivardhari, Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tiravana Chari, Yamuna Tiravana Chari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Kishore Kishori, Jaya Kishore Kishori, Jaya Kishore Kishori, Jaya Kishore Kishori, Jaya Goranitai, Jaya Goranitai, Jaya Goranitai, Jaya Goranitai, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Premanande. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachanine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pastachade Shatanine Panchakopa Tubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hare Krishna, everyone. I'm sorry that we're going to be a little impersonal here and not be able to see all who's with us and have some back and forth. Yashodanandana Prabhu was so kind as to invite me to speak this evening. And he mentioned how you're going through the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter by chapter. And he asked me to use Canto 1, Chapter 12, the birth of Maharaj Parikshit, as a launching pad. So tonight's discussion is entitled Making the Best Use of a Bad Bargain. So I'm sure each of us has the experience many times of getting a bad bargain. And a typical common occurrence, for example, is say somebody goes and buys a used car. Perhaps you've had this experience. You buy a used car and everything seems fantastic. You get a fantastic price and you take it home, and before you know it, it's giving you one problem after another, after another. And then you realize, oops, I got a bad bargain. I bought a lemon. That's what they say when you buy a bad car. I got a lemon. But as we know, they say, when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. So Prabhupada used this term, make the use of a bad bargain. And it's actually a very nice kind of motto for devotees to live by. So I wanted to look at, based on what I was reading in Canto 1, Chapter 12, I would like to look at the life of Maharaj Parikshit and, really use his example of making the best use of a bad bargain. So when the sages of Naimisharanya had gathered from a 1,000-year sacrifice, their motive was to perform a sacrifice that would bring auspiciousness to the world, because they understood that, Kali Yuga has just begun. And in this age, humans are very unfortunate. They're short-lived. They're always quarrelsome. They're misguided. It's just a terrible, terrible age. So to do that would be most beneficial for the whole world. And it is the best yajna to perform. Sutta Goswami, by the Lord's arrangement, appeared, and they sat him down from him as to what is the highest good, what is the best sacrifice to perform. And Sutta Goswami clearly said that hearing and chanting and remembering about this is the surest, most guaranteed means of freedom from all miseries. So in that discussion between Sutta Goswami and Shanaka Rishi, who's the spokesperson for all the sages, Shanaka Rishi, at the beginning of the 4th chapter of Canto 1, he says to Sutta that it is said that Maharaj Parikshit is a great first-class devotee of the Lord, and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him. So here, Shanaka Rishi was very wise, and he was understanding that when Sutta said, you should hear about the Lord, that's all you should do. Your whole yajna should just be sitting here and hearing about the Lord, his activities, his name, fame, glories. Shanaka Rishi understood, well, that includes his devotees. They're part of his paraphernalia. So he asked about Maharaj Parikshit, because Sutta had heard Srimad Bhagavatam being recited by Shukadev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj. And Sutta Goswami, Shanaka Rishi was appreciating that, wow, now Sutta is going to repeat that Srimad Bhagavatam to us. We're going to get to hear it. And who is that special soul, Maharaj Parikshit, that was able to precipitate this, speaking of Bhagavatam? So Sutta Goswami goes on to many different topics. And in the 7th chapter, he says, now I shall begin the transcendental narration of the Lord Shri Krishna and topics of the birth, activities, and deliverance of King Parikshit, the sage among kings. They still haven't gotten to that. And then again, he goes on to so many topics. Then we go all the way to chapter 12. And Shanaka brings the point up again. And he inquires, how was the great Emperor Parikshit, who was a highly intelligent and great devotee, born in that womb? Because Sutta Goswami was starting to discuss about the ending of the battle of Kurukshetra, how Ashwatthama sent a Brahmastra to the womb of Uttara, and in that womb of Uttara was the last heir of the Pandu dynasty, Parikshit. So they inquire, well, how was he born in that womb? How did his death take place? And what did he achieve after his death? And some verses later, Sutta Goswami, this is actually the Brahmanas speaking to Yudhishthir. They're telling Yudhishthir that this personality who's going to take birth from Uttara's womb, he's an amazing personality. And they tell Yudhishthir, after hearing about his death, which will be caused by the bite of a snake bird sent by a son of a Brahmana, he will get himself freed from all material attachment and surrender unto the personality of Godhead, taking shelter of him. So I wanted to look at this episode of Parikshit being cursed. Now we all know the story of Parikshit being cursed. When he was emperor, he was traveling the world to check out his empire. And he was hungry and thirsty as he was traveling on foot. And he came across, in the forest, he was crossing, and he came across a hermitage with one sage, Shamika Rishi. And the sage didn't open his eyes, he was entranced. So in essence, he ignored the emperor, didn't even offer him water. Parikshit got really upset, picked up a dead snake and garlanded the Rishi with the snake. And then Shringi, the Brahmana's little boy, got really upset that how dare you offend my father. And he cursed Parikshit Maharaj to be bit by a poisonous snake bird in 7 days, and that would cause immediate death. How did Parikshit respond to this? So Srila Prabhupada writes, I'm just going to read a short paragraph here. Srila Prabhupada says, when he, Parikshit, was unduly cursed by a Brahmana's son, he could have invoked the mercy of the Lord to save him, but he did not want to because he was a pure devotee. A pure devotee never asks the Lord for any undue favor. Maharaj Parikshit knew that the curse of the Brahmana's son upon him was unjustified, as everyone else knew. But he did not want to counteract it because he knew also that the age of Kali had begun, and that the first symptom of the age, namely degradation of the highly talented Brahmana community, had also begun. He did not want to interfere with the current of the time, but he prepared himself to meet death very cheerfully and very properly. And then later he says, since he was always protected by the Lord, he could have avoided the effect of such a curse by the grace of the Lord, but he did not take such undue advantage for nothing. Rather, he made the best use of a bad bargain. So what is our bad bargain? Those of us who are having material bodies, we have a bad bargain. And that bad bargain is we're living in the material world with a material body, which only experiences 3 things. We think we're having so many experiences. We're only experiencing 3 things, and that is atmika klesha, miseries that arise from our own body and mind, adibhautika klesha, miseries that arise from other living entities toward us, and adidaivika klesha, miseries that come from nature, demigods. And sometimes we feel like we're experiencing happiness, but it's just because we're feeling some relief from those kleshas. And Prabhupada always likes to use this example of one type of punishment was that the criminal would be dunked in a lake, a big pool of water. And the criminal would be dunked all the way, like head in the water. And of course you drown after a couple of minutes. You can't do that more than a couple of minutes. So when the criminal's like just about to just take his last breath, which would be a breath of water, which would cause his death, the, people who are doing the punishment, they would yank him out of the water and he'd gasp for breath. And then when he's relaxed a little bit, then he'd dunk him back in again and repeat this. So we're only experiencing klesha, nothing else. That relief that we feel is just a momentary seeming absence of klesha, and we call it happiness. So what are these kleshas? We generally complain about these kleshas. And our very common habit is to point fingers. I am suffering because that mosquito bit me. That person insulted me. That person stole my money. My biochemistry is all messed up, so I have some disease. We're always pointing fingers, blaming some, situation or some person. But ultimately, all these kleshas are only due to karma. There's no other cause. We want to say, oh, I went to the used car lot and I bought this car. It was a really good deal. And I took it home and now the transmission fell out on the second day. and this happened, repair now, and we want to blame the car dealership or the previous owner or the mechanic. But why are these things happening to us? It's just karma. And that's our bad bargain, that we're living in a world where the only rule is for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. It's the world of justice. Break a rule, you can't get around it. There's no rules. So all the kleshas are due only because of karma, or if one's actually a devotee, Krishna himself may send some suffering to his devotee, just to test the devotee or to strengthen that devotee's surrender, improve their faith, etc. So if we're decent amount of a devotee, our kleshas could be due to Krishna's desire. So kleshas come from karma, or they come from Krishna's desire, or you could say they also come from curses. But then we could say, well, what's the cause of that curse? Was it my karma to be cursed? Maybe it was the Lord's arrangement that I was cursed. So in either case, whether it's karma or whether it's the Lord's arrangement, we can't avoid the kleshas, right? Mare Krishna Rake Ke, Rake Krishna Mare Ke. If Krishna wants to kill you, who can protect you? And if Krishna wants to protect you, who can kill you? So this is the world that we live in. So when we read Bhagavatam, it is not just philosophy, all this tattva and siddhanta, but there's many, it's just replete page after page with down-to-earth practical examples by devotees like you and me. Well, maybe they're more advanced than you and me, but they're personalities in this world. So I wanted to look at 3 personalities and how did they deal with this issue of how to deal with a bad bargain. And we're going to take these 3 personalities that we just mentioned. The first one is Shamika Rishi. So Shamika Rishi is that Rishi who Parikshit put the dead snake on his shoulders as a garland. And Shamika Rishi was in trance. He didn't even notice that the snake was garland on his shoulders. Not until his son, raised such a fuss that he woke up from his trance and what's going on. But Shamika Rishi, he was the recipient of a bad bargain. He didn't deserve to have that snake, seemingly, he didn't deserve to have that snake wrapped around his neck. He was innocent in his trance. But when he heard what had happened, he did not take that insult seriously. He did not feel insulted or offended by Parikshit. Not at all. So he reacted to the bad bargain by not blaming anybody, not getting upset about it. As a perpetrator of bad bargains, he didn't get involved in that. He was not in the, tit for tat mood. He was just hands off. He did not turn around and try to give a bad bargain to somebody else. So that's a pretty stoic position to have. Means he wasn't like the emotional, acting out of emotion. Now we turn to his son, Shringi. Shringi was not the person who was personally dealt with by Parikshit, but he considered himself a recipient of a bad bargain. That why my father is being cursed by this puffed up Kshatriya named Parikshit. And how did he respond to that? He got angry. He felt offended. He just couldn't get over it. He couldn't control his mind. And so then what did he do? Being angry that he and his father were recipients of a bad bargain, he decided to be a perpetrator of a bad bargain. It's called retaliation or revenge. So he turned around and he made a huge offense to Parikshit Maharaj. And what was that offense? Cursing him to die in 7 days. A curse that he couldn't withdraw. Out of his pride, this young Brahmana boy did like that. Now think about it in our life. Okay, we don't even have the power to curse somebody to die in 7 days. But what if we did? There'd be a lot of dead people around here, I tell you, right? Oh, she looked at me like that, or he said that behind my back. And, you know, it's a good thing we don't have the power to curse, because we'd have a lot of suffering, hurt, or dead people around. So we might want to meditate on Shringi's example here right at the beginning of the Bhagavatam and realize that this is why Kali Yuga is going on. This is the exact episode which kind of like blew the horn and announced that Kali Yuga has begun. Okay, folks, guess what? Kali Yuga has just begun. And Prabhupada comments, how did Kali Yuga begin? It began when the Brahmana class lost their qualification and behaved improperly. And he said Shringi was that, particular personality that was like the first domino to knock that line of dominoes over. So we are all guilty of this. We might say, oh boy, darn that Shringi, he started Kali Yuga with his nonsense behavior. But we're all doing that. We're all being recipients of bad bargains and turning around and being a perpetrator of an even badder bargain to somebody else. So what about Parikshit Maharaj? How did he deal with bad bargains? Well, first he was a perpetrator. We have to admit, and he admitted, that he was a perpetrator of an unjust act. When he was really tired and really thirsty and hungry, he did do an unjust act of garlanding the rishi with a dead snake. But Parikshit felt really remorseful. He was distressed over his mistake. And he immediately said, oh, now distress is going to come upon me. I deserve it. That's going to be a reaction, I can't do offenses like that. And so he totally owned it. He totally took responsibility for his misbehavior, and he repented and he welcomed distress because he knew he would deserve it. Then when reflecting on Shringi's curse upon him, when he was a recipient of a bad bargain, Parikshit, as we read in Prabhupada's purport, he did not try to counteract it. He may or may not have been able on his own to counteract it, but certainly he could have asked Krishna to counteract it. And the proof that Krishna would have counteracted it, if Parikshit asked, is that Krishna saved him in the womb of his mother when Ashvatthama threw that Brahmastra weapon. Krishna went above and beyond the call of duty to save Parikshit in the womb. So certainly he could have saved Parikshit from this snake bite, but Parikshit didn't ask. Not at all. Earlier it comes later in the first canto, but I'm saying chronologically in the life of Parikshit. When he was again touring his kingdom, he came across Dharma Bull, and he noticed that 3 of the Dharma Bull's legs were broken. And he saw the personality of Kali standing just a few feet away with a big sword in his hand. And instead of just immediately accusing Kali of being the perpetrator of this violent act, Parikshit asked Dharma Bull, "What is the cause of your 3 legs being broken like this? What is all this?" And Dharma Bull said to Parikshit, "Well, some say this is the cause, and some say that is the cause, and yet others say this other thing is the cause." Dharma Bull never indicated that the personality of Kali, who was standing right there with blood on his hands, he never indicated that Kali was the perpetrator. So Parikshit said, "Ah, yes, you are very wise. You are speaking Shastric truth. And what is that truth? That the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts is also intended for the one who identifies the perpetrator. So the perpetrator of an irreligious act, they obviously have a bad destination. But one who identifies the perpetrator, he did it, or she did it. Look, you caught him red-handed. The one who identifies the perpetrator also gets that same bad destination. Now I wanted to put a little asterisk here, a little footnote here. I understand this to be referring to when you identify the perpetrator of sins against yourself. You know, who's the perpetrator that caused such and such misery or whatever to me? My understanding is that this teaching refers to that. It does not refer to, for example, if it's your job to protect somebody, like parents protect their children and the police protect the citizens and what have you. It's their job. Because it's their job to protect, it's also their job to identify the perpetrator of, misdeeds. So this teaching that the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts is also intended for the one who identifies the perpetrator refers to those irreligious acts which are committed against us. Now, we have an example, actually, in recent times. Many of you know who Peter Burwash is. Anyway, he was living in Hawaii in the 70s. And he got involved in the Krishna consciousness movement while he was in Hawaii. And he really, really liked the teachings, etc. He got to meet Srila Prabhupada on more than one occasion. Although never initiated, he considers himself to this day a follower of Srila Prabhupada. So one day in Hawaii, he gave a $500 cash donation to the temple. And that, of course, means you hand the money to somebody. So he gave, and $500 in cash back in the mid 70s. I don't know, what's that today? $5,000? I don't know, $3,000, whatever. A lot of money. So he gave this $500 in cash to devotee X. Here's a donation for the temple. Oh, okay, thanks a lot, Dr. Peter. Well, that devotee decided to pocket money and leave because that was a lot of money. Shortly thereafter, Srila Prabhupada visited the Hawaii temple. Peter Burwash got to meet with Prabhupada. And he said to Prabhupada, you know what? Recently, I gave a $500 cash donation to this devotee for the temple, through the hands of this devotee, but he actually pocketed it and ran away with my money. Like, oh my God, I was ripped off. Prabhupada said to him, Peter Burwash, do not be angry at the agent of your karma. Do not be angry at the agent of your karma. And Peter Burwash, really was taken aback. He wasn't expecting that kind of an answer or response. And he said that stuck with him his whole life. It was such a, potent teaching. So similarly, Parikshit is also glorifying Dharma Bull, that he's not becoming angry at the agent of his karma or the agent of the Lord's direct desire and arrangement. So going back, Shamika Rishi, he identified to the bad bargain by just being stoic. I'm not mad at anybody. I forgive him. He didn't even commit an offense. I don't need to forgive him. Everything's okay. Shringi got totally emotional, totally upset, and turned around and counter-cursed or cursed Parikshit and became the perpetrator of a bad bargain on the emperor. But Parikshit, this is what he does, and this is what we're supposed to follow. We don't want to just be all stoic, nor do we want to be emotional. We want to follow Parikshit's example. So how did Parikshit deal with this bad bargain? What did he do? He decided to go to the bank of the Ganges and fast until death, to spend an entire week, the last week of his life, just fasting and engaged in ardent hearing. He didn't just, be all stoic, nor did he get all emotional, but he took the proactive step, the spiritual proactive step of making the best use of this bad bargain. So Prabhupada said that he joyfully went to meet with death. So Parikshit, he just dropped a hot potato. He just dropped it like a hot potato, everything. His empire, his queen, his offspring, his treasury, his military, everything. Just dropped it like a hot potato. Even his royal dress, he just put on a little simple loincloth and walked barefoot to the Ganges and left it all behind. And he sat to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, and he heard Shukadev, how simply by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, that just by hearing this Srimad Bhagavatam, all lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness is extinguished at once, and the loving feeling for devotional service sprouts up in the heart. When we get into Canto 2, 8th chapter, Parikshit says to Shukadev, Please continue narrating Srimad Bhagavatam so that I can place my mind upon the Supreme Soul, Lord Krishna, and being completely freed from material qualities, thus relinquish this body. Prabhupada makes an interesting comment. He says, Maharaj Parikshit had already given up his connections with his kingdom and family, the most attractive features of materialism, right? How many of us can give up our family and give up our kingdom, our little world that we're the king in? But still, he was conscious of his material body. He wanted to be free of such bondage also by the constant association of the Lord. So he's been hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And he says to Shukadev Goswami, please keep narrating Srimad Bhagavatam. Why? Because although I have been freed of attachment to family and treasury and kingdom and all these things that people find very difficult to become detached from, I'm still conscious of my body. I'm still disturbed by hunger and thirst. I can't meet with death while I'm still conscious of my body, because bodily consciousness means one has to take birth again. So he makes the correct decision that I need to just keep getting more absorbed in ardent hearing. Please continue your narration. So they continue their discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam. And not until we come all the way to the beginning of the 10th canto. Canto 10, chapter 1, text 13. Finally, on day number 7, Parikshit says, I have given up even drinking water. Yet because I am drinking the nectar of topics about Krishna, which is flowing from the lotus mouth of your lordship, my hunger and thirst, which are extremely difficult to bear, cannot hinder me. It took him 9 cantos of ardent hearing to come to the point where he was no longer conscious of his material body. This material body is the bad bargain. It is the recipient of karma. It is the doer of karmic activities, which award us, as a result, karmic reactions. This body is our bad bargain. And unless and until we become completely free from the bodily conception of life, we're not going anywhere. We're just taking birth right here on planet Earth again. So Parikshit understood that. And he ardently heard all 9 cantos without eating or drinking. I mean, we can't even sit through a Bhagavatam class for 45 minutes. We have to have our, herbal tea sitting next to us to drink every 5 minutes. And our phone to check, our messages every few minutes. We have to have a comfortable seat to sit on. We have to be promised like a little meal or a big meal right afterwards. We can hardly listen for an hour. We're constantly disturbed by our body, not to speak of all the other things we're attached to. So Parikshit heard 9 cantos very, very attentively. Finally, he was free from being conscious of his material body. So what was he able to do when he finished being conscious of his material body? Now he was qualified to hear the pastimes of Krishna, the 10th canto. Shukadev Goswami did not narrate the pastimes of Krishna. The whole conversation, he didn't even go there. He narrated the pastimes of Krishna. 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 He narrated the He discussed so many avatars of Krishna, so many pastimes of different avatars and devotees, creation of the material world, so many topics. And that was all for purifying the mind of Parikshit Maharaj. It was all for freeing him from his bad bargain. While we're absorbed in the bad bargain, the material body, how are we going to take to the real bargain? So all of this hearing finally purified Parikshit to the point where he now could sit in rapt attention and relish Krishna Leela in the 10th canto. So this is our life's mission. We need to recognize and admit that life is nothing but a bad bargain. We shouldn't be foolish and think we're going to make a comfortable place here. You know, I'm going to be all happy and warm and cozy and safe and secure. You know, Krishna himself has already said that this world is a miserable place. So we have to recognize what our bad bargain is. We have to recognize that we're the cause of the bad bargain. There's nobody to point a finger to. And we have to take the proactive measure, not the neutral stoic measure of Shamika Rishi, nor the negative reactive measure of Shringi, but the spiritually proactive measure exemplified by Parikshit Maharaj. And due to his mercy, we get to hear this whole Srimad Bhagavatam as he heard it. And if we hear it as he heard it, meaning not just hearing with the ears, but if we actually hear the way he heard, with full faith, with rapt attention, with determination to not get entangled or distracted by anything material. Therefore, he went to the bank of the Ganges. He didn't go to Hastinapur, right? He didn't take his suitcases with him or pictures of his family. You know, we got to have pictures of our family on the wall. With that kind of determination, we have to take the proactive spiritual measure and make a permanent end to our bad bargain. There is no other way. So I think I'll stop there and leave 15 minutes for any kind of discussion. Apparently, Yashodanandana Prabhu will facilitate that.
Hare Krishna, Danakeli Mataji. Thank you so much. A few questions lined up. There's a question that says, and you touched on it toward the end, but probably an elaboration. Seeing injustice, and it's a three-part, so I'll leave it up to you how you want to tackle it. When seeing injustice,
break in the internet connection here. Okay, I heard you say seeing an injustice.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. When seeing, I'll turn off my video. When seeing injustice in society today, think the Black Lives Matter movement and police brutality.
Seeing injustice in the society today.
How should we properly respond so that we aren't reacting like Shringi in the mood of revenge? What is the role of Krishna consciousness?
If we're in the position as a protector, you know, if you're the leader of society and you see injustices happening in your kingdom, then you have every responsibility to go out there and deal with the aggressors. If we're just a common citizen, we take the law own hands. We might say, well, we can become activists and activism to get the government to open their eyes and deal with the situation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what did we read? Prabhupada said that, how did he say it? That Parikshit decided to allow the course of time. Parikshit did not want to interfere the current of life. And these things are destined to happen. That's what Kali Yuga is all about, in case you haven't known that. Kali Yuga is nothing but going downhill rapidly. So you can't change that current of time. What you can do is not be a perpetrator of injustice. If you see injustice being done to others, all you can do is educate others how A, don't be a perpetrator of injustice, and B, how to react when you are a victim or recipient of injustice. We have to teach people how to make the best use of a bad bargain. Today's world is nothing but a bunch of shringis, bunch of immature shringis running around. I'm going to drop a bomb on your country. Well, I'm going to drop a bomb on your country. You know, it's like a bunch of little kids. So there's nothing you can do, because without educating people to higher principles, without giving them a process by which they can purify their heart so that they're capable of responding on a higher level than just immature emotion, nothing you can do to change the world. So first we have to change ourselves, because you can't teach people or dictate to people what they should do when you yourself are not expert at doing it. So physician, heal thyself. So the first thing we have to do when we see injustice in the world is look at how we may be guilty of perpetrating injustice, even on a tiny scale, to those around us, and learn the art, by following Parikshit Maharaj's example, of how to respond proactively to this disease of giving a bad bargain to others, and how to respond to being a recipient of a bad bargain. Then we're in a position to go out and teach the innocent people how they can make the best of a bad bargain. You can't get rid of the bad bargain. The bad bargain's here to stay, and it's going to get worse. That's the definition of Kali Yuga. The bargain keeps getting worse. It manifests in newer and newer ways. You can't get rid of the bad bargain. You can only respond to it. And you have to respond to it properly. And that is through spiritual education of others and spiritual practices ourselves, not by material, going out there with signs and joining political activism or social activism movements or something. You can't stop the current of time. Is that okay?
Yes, and in your answer, you got the other parts of it as well, I think. So thank you, Mataji. 2 more questions so far that have come in. The first one is, do you think if Parikshit Maharaj didn't make that mistake, we would never have gotten Bhagavatam?
Well, Krishna wants us to get Srimad Bhagavatam, so he used Parikshit Maharaj to be the instrument so that we could get Srimad Bhagavatam. So if, he had not, quote unquote, offended Shamika Rishi and got cursed by Shringi, Krishna would have arranged a different scenario, a different personality to be used as an instrument to bring us the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is not first time Srimad Bhagavatam's been given, right? Srimad Bhagavatam has been extant since the beginning of creation. So we would still have Srimad Bhagavatam through a different agent. Anything else?
Yes. So another question is, how do we make use of a good bargain by hearing devotionally when everything seems good? I guess it's that period
I
of
only heard
that-
how do. I heard the first
Oh.
couple words, how do, I'm sorry.
How do we make use of a good bargain by hearing devotion when
How do we
everything
make use
is
of a
good?
good bargain? Well, everything is meant for Krishna's service, to be used to please Krishna. So when we do become recipients of good bargains, what usually happens? We claim ownership of, I just won the lottery, or, I got an inheritance, or whatever it is. I have good health. I have big degree. I have a big position. I get, good money, good salary, a beautiful family. These are seemingly good bargains. Of course, they're not really, because they put us in the bodily conception of life and increase our attachment, material attachment. So I wouldn't really call them good bargains, but relatively they're good bargains. Or let's say they're less bad as other bad bargains. We don't respond properly. We take ownership of those things. Oh yes, I deserve it because, I'm such a good person. And we take those things to become proud. We take those things to relax. We take those things to become enjoyers. So Prabhupada said that a life of material attachment and pursuit of Krishna consciousness go ill together. So is it a good bargain to find yourself in a hunky-dory, comfy, warm and comfy position in this world, all safe and secure and la-di-da? Good bargain? Prabhupada said a comfortable life or a life of material attachment and Krishna consciousness go ill together. So when we do get these good bargains, we should be on guard that, oh my God, let me make sure I don't fall into Maya because of this, and let me utilize whatever it is that I got in Krishna's service. Don't make my life comfortable. Make Krishna's life comfortable. I make my life comfortable just to the extent that I need, keep body and soul together, be healthy, be, properly situated and happy, and have your health there so that you can serve Krishna. But don't be fooled into thinking, ooh, now I get to be the enjoyer. I'm the center now, right? Maya's got unlimited tricks in her bag to fortify our bodily conception of life, which is the bad bargain. Is that all right? Anything else?
Yes, one more question. So one says, let me just pull it up. So there's a quote by Norman Cousins, who is a journalist, author, and activist.
A quote by Norman, and I missed everything after that. Sorry. My
by
internet
Norman
connection.
Cousins. He's a journalist slash author slash researcher and advocate, activist. He says, death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies inside us while we live. Can you elaborate on that quote from the perspective of Srimad Bhagavatam?
Yeah, so Prabhupada said that we're living in a soul-killing civilization. The human form of life is meant for self-realization. But while we're living our life, and these of mass distraction deter us from self-realization, when Prithu Maharaj met the four Kumars, they said to him, that the greatest obstacle, that's what's killed inside of us, is our urge, our desire for self-realization, our potential. So they, perpetrators of the weapons of mass distraction, strip you of all ability to realize your potential, and instead throw you down into the level of animals who simply eat and sleep and mate and defend and think, wow, don't I have a good bargain? I don't have to go to school like the humans do. I don't have to pay taxes. You know, I got it made in the shade. So the humans have been stripped of their potential for self-realization. And then when death comes, we stupidly say, oh my God, a loss of life, how horrible. Death is so horrible. What's wrong with an animal dying? Oh, look, a squirrel just died. Oh, well, I'm gonna lose sleep over it. A spider just got killed. Oh my God, I can't sleep tonight. So the real thing, the thing that's worse than death, is the killing of our propensity to move towards self-realization. And in Kali Yuga, that's what the educational system, the political system, the social system, etc., are covertly doing in very subversive ways, is that they're squelching that fire humans, which can only be satisfied through self-realization. Perhaps there's nothing else.
Oh, no, the connection was interrupted, but that actually is the last question, Mataji.
Okay.
So I want to thank you very much for taking the time to share with us, you know, this journey of especially how to take the example of Parikshit Maharaj, and with so much happening, just how to take this transcendental knowledge and use it as an opportunity for advancement. So thank you so much for that. If you wanted to make a closing statement, otherwise we can conclude the Sunday feast. It's your call.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say that this whole doing everything virtually these days is indeed a bad bargain, and devotees are making the best use of a bad bargain by somehow or other coming together to hear and chant. So I will admit that this is very, very, very different than having a live audience. I usually like to see the people that, and so I apologize for, you know, not being able to have our usual back and forth interaction, but thank you for engaging me and making the best use of this bad bargain so that we could hear and chant together. Jai. Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shishi Kishore Kishore ki jai.